1 in 4 Minnesotans lives under a homeowners association. There's a major bipartisan push at the state capitol to change HOA regulations. Here's my conversation with Representative Kristen Bahner, a DFL rep from Maple Grove. Well, joining us right now is Representative Bahner from Maple Grove. Thank you so much for coming on.
Good morning, Esme. It's good to be with you today.
All right. Why are you proposing this bill?
Well, you know, what we've seen across the country and here in Minnesota is an explosion of HOAs. Currently, about 82% of new homes coming onto the market are actually in an HOA. And so it used to be the conventional wisdom that if you don't like an HOA, you know, just choose something else. Well, with 82%, I think it's fair to say that there aren't a whole lot of other options. And
what are the problems that people are running into that you want to help them with?
Well, right. And we have seen as that growth has exploded, we've seen HOAs that are doing a great job, doing wonderful work. But unfortunately, that means there's also a lot of HOAs in which we've created sort of this quasi level of government that is where things are not always going smoothly. And in fact, in some cases, a homeowner's dream has become their worst nightmare as they've become part of an HOA. Everything from really egregious and awkward rules, kind of capricious regulations, folks being foreclosed upon for very small amounts. In one case, we had a listening session where a woman said she was foreclosed upon for $56, even though she was 100% up to date on all of her monthly assessments.
And I think we all agree. Just interrupt you there because I'm really curious about this because that's something that I've read. I guess I just find that shocking that could actually happen. But one of the things that you have in your bill, barring HOAs from foreclosing on homes over unpaid fees of less than $2,500, is this really happening?
Is. And we've heard numerous accounts of this happening. And quite frankly, I think we all agree that, you know, we understand that if you're not paying your monthly assessments, we have to make sure we take care of everybody in the HOA. They still have to pay their bills and remove the snow and do the lawn care. But we also know that it would be egregious to take someone's home for such a small thing like forgetting to put away a trash can or a minor fine and fee. I think most folks would agree that that's just unacceptable.
Right. I have heard from the HOA Leadership Network that is opposing this. I know you're familiar with them. And he says, or they say, excuse me, the board of directors are already governed by the Minnesota Common Interest Ownership Act, Chapter 515B, and that this legislation is not necessary. What do you say to that?
Esme, as you know, legislators rarely get involved for all the folks who think things are going great. And frankly, if it weren't for all of the reports of some pretty egregious things that were going on or the widespread themes of issues that have been happening within the HOAs, we wouldn't be here, right? Legislators don't get involved for the 86% of folks who claim that they love their HOA. We get involved when we hear from the 14% who've said something has gone terribly, horribly wrong.
Right. And I want to stress, too, because I think it's really important, your effort is bipartisan. It's a very bipartisan issue, and you've got their sponsors on Republicans and Democrats together, which is a little unusual, but you're definitely there. What is the response from the public on this? What are you hearing from your constituents and other constituents who care about this issue?
You know, during the legislative work group on CIC and HOA reform, we held 14 sessions, heard 30 to 40 hours of testimony, heard 3 public listening sessions across the metro, and we heard really strong representation from folks in the community about the real need for this. We heard from board presidents, treasurers, homeowners, who really thoroughly said, this needs to happen. We need to have better rules and regulations, and what we have under the current MNCOA is just not sufficient to meet the need. And what we see when we talk to legislators nationally is really a similar theme, that we just haven't kept pace with the growth, and our statute really doesn't represent where we need to be, and that reform is necessary.
All right. Well, I know that you told me that you're optimistic that this will actually come to a vote and pass. We certainly will be following it because I know that it is of incredible interest to a lot of people. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes. Thank you, Esme.
Now, the HOA leadership network that is against these reforms told us, quote, "We feel the reform legislation is unnecessary as boards of directors are already governed by the Minnesota Common Interest Ownership Act and by each HOA's governing documents, with the vast majority of HOA leaders doing a good job of managing those rules."